probably still traveling. I know he was at the debate, I think, last night. So
Yep.
I don't know whether he's traveling home now or not. I don't know. But and I think that's it. So we might as well get started. I see that we have a few residents joining tonight. That's great. So it's 7 o'clock, 7:01. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Just a reminder to all that this meeting is being recorded. So thank you for joining. I guess the first item on the agenda is to approve our minutes from our last meeting. Thank you, Josh, for sending those out and taking those. They look pretty accurate from my perspective. I don't know if the rest of you had a chance to look at them, but I would appreciate a motion to approve if someone would do that.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the minutes of the 9/16/2020 meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I, Darren Boston, second the motion.
Great, thank you, Darren. Appreciate that. All right, so let's take a roll call vote, Josh.
Sure. Ed?
Yes.
Leone?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's everyone.
Yep.
Just wanted
All
to-
right. Thank you, Josh. Okay, thank you for that. Next item is the public forum. We are a few minutes early. So we can either just wait or we can maybe take another item out of order if anyone would like to.
I, Thomas Golden, would motion that we now discuss the citizen survey.
Okay. Do you think we have time in the next 10 minutes to do that?
Yes.
All right. Was there a second on that motion?
I, Cleone, second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, let's take a vote on that. Josh?
Ed?
Yes.
Leone?
Yes.
Darren?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you. All right, Tom,
Josh.
take it away.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
So while that starts, so we now, as of Monday, we have 101 responses to the charter review survey, citizen survey. It was originally set to close today, but we have extended that by 7 days. So it's now going to close next Wednesday at 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
So, and that's just, the hope is to get more people to respond. We keep putting up on Facebook, various other venues through the town, including at the library, word of mouth. For those of you that don't know me, I tend to walk around the town a lot with my daughter in our wagon, and will pretty much tell anybody I can about it. So hopefully that's drumming up something. I'll rip through some of the questions and the responses. I'm not going to go through the open responses. Everybody should have had a copy of those already. To take a look at. We're going to need more time to aggregate those responses before we have a further discussion on it. But for question 3, how familiar are you with the town charter? The general feeling is somewhat familiar for the respondents to the survey. It's kind of what we expected. How would you rate the overall operation of the town? Happy to report that 70 out of the 101 respondents said it's adequate. I didn't really expect a whole lot of excellence, and I'm happy that we only had a handful of poor for that. Question 5, it's kind of a split between a yes and a no, consistent with our discussion at the last meeting, on whether or not town council should receive an annual $3,000 stipend for service. 38 yeses, 37 no's, so it's kind of split down the middle still. Should the town clerk be an appointed position? That is overwhelmingly no. People wanted to remain an elected position, so I think that it's pretty clear cut to me. Should an election recall provision be added to the town charter? This one, you have another not as overwhelming, but pretty firm yes response. People seem to want that. There are a handful of people that do not have enough information to answer this question. it might require some additional education, but I think between the last time this came up for review and now it still seems to be a yes, so push forward on that. Question 8, should town employees be allowed to serve on town committees? More no's than yeses, 60 to 33. Question 9, so this one, for clarification for the group, there has been some dialogue on the Facebook groups about how poorly worded this question is and such. I'm okay with the way the question is worded. I think we vetted these questions more times than probably we needed to. Should the term limits provision of the town charter be amended? Most people said that most responses said they don't have enough information to answer this question. Okay, more information needs to be provided for an educational perspective if this is something that goes to a ballot initiative. But of the people that did pick between yes or no, yes won by a good margin, almost twice. And then dropping the wet signature requirement from 100 to 75 to be on the ballot was another one that was split. A slight victory by a 1 for no versus yes. And I think that's it for the easily quantifiable responses. Then I did break up the question responses 11 and 12. I did not take the time because it's more tedious than I want it to be for number 13, which is how did you hear about the survey? It's not overwhelmingly Facebook for those that are interested. It is a wide variety, a lot of word of mouth, but there is a good deal of Facebook, but it's not every response. So question 11 has a good deal of responses and it's a mixed bag. Some people just say we should get rid of the town charter, return to town meetings. There's a good variety of responses in here. Like I said, this is going to take some time to go through, and kind of pick the ones that are most referenced. And then I would say maybe the subcommittee can talk about this and bring it back to the whole committee. Maybe the top 5 answers for each. 11 and 12. I'm trying to think if there's anything like super cool that I wanted to pull out of here. There is one response in here that this committee is useless, so I thought that was a nice touch. I'm a little cranky, sorry folks. But again, there's almost 100 responses for question 12, so
that's good.
Lots of dialogue in there, and there's multiple in some of them, so if you're doing the math on the rows, that's why it doesn't add up there. Like this one has a couple different points to it. So that was my down and dirty 7-minute discussion of the survey responses. Now, does anybody have questions on it?
Nice job, Tom. Appreciate the effort that you have done leading this and the rest of the committee as well. So given the fact that it ends at midnight roughly next Wednesday,
yep.
I guess we'll have hopefully some more responses over the next week, and then we can actually get into the details and discuss as a committee. The open-ended questions, so you guys as a committee are going to try and categorize those as best you can, right?
Yep. It's going to be general buckets as far as the way I look at it. Like if someone, I'm trying to think of like the town councilor, the number of councilors in for the town. Like if it's someone says there should be 2, someone says there should be 12, someone says there should be 7, I would just put that under the general category of number of town councilors as a discussion point.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear what the reasons are if they stated any, why they feel that way too, right?
Yep. So there is some way to go back and figure out who the person was for the responses, either by their name or there's some other means that we can use. So if we, see something that's really catches our attention, but we don't know what they're talking about or want them to explain, I think it might be an opportunity to invite them to one of the sessions to chat about it.
Right.
So
good. Yeah, we can follow up with them.
Yes.
So our next meeting we're actually going to meet next Wednesday, and then our next meeting after that is the 21st. So you think we can devote a good portion of time on the 21st to go through this in detail?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? comments?
The question in the survey where I guess most people needed more information regarding term limits.
Yep.
Maybe we can just add that information, add what the term limits are, just the number, like should 3-year term limit be amended or something like that.
So Darren, that wasn't the closest one. Are you talking about the one that was like split 50-50 or?
No, there was one that had like maybe 40. They didn't know, and then the others,
Yep.
they were like, I think were 50-50.
Yep, the term limit one had like, yeah, it was the 40 that didn't have enough information. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like maybe if they had a number that they would have, like if say it was 3-year limit, something like that, maybe they might be useful information.
Yeah, so Darren, Tom and I talked offline about that, whether or not we felt it was worth changing the survey at this point after so many.
No, it's not worth changing the survey, no.
Yeah.
But I just,
But I do think, it's worth clarifying it at some point if we can do that. But anyone else? I think this is going to be great input for us as we, discuss some of the potential changes. So at least we'll have a good sense. I mean, 100 is not a huge amount, but it certainly gives us a sense of what some of the citizens are feeling about some of these, controversial items. So great. Well, thank you, Tom.
Anytime.
Rob, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. We might as well transition now into the public forum. It's about that time. So I want to thank the folks who have joined. It looks like we've got a few people. I see Sam, Marilee, Gina, Carlton, and Pat Neary. Welcome, you guys. So we'll dive right in. Josh, I'm going to share my screen for the beginning part here. Hopefully you can all see this. All right, can everybody see that?
yes.
All right, great. All right, greetings from the Charter Review Committee to all of you who have joined tonight. Our goal during this forum is really twofold: to share information with you about what the CRC is currently doing and to listen and gather input from you that will help direct our efforts in the coming months. We'll start with a presentation that will last about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for some dialogue. During the presentation, all your mics will be turned off. For those wishing to speak, you'll have an opportunity to do so at the end during the Q&A feedback session. As for the agenda, it's pretty simple. We'll share a little bit about where we've been and where we are today, then talk a little bit about our strategy for the future, ending with some thoughts on how we plan to complete our mission. As I said before, we will then move to a time of listening from you. Josh, I see somebody's in the waiting room. Josh?
Yep, I be able to come in now.
All right, great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we thought it would be interesting, even though this is a discussion about the charter, to start with some general facts about Bridgewater. So this slide here just has some general facts about, the fact that we're 27 miles south of Boston. We were established many years ago as an industrial and agricultural farming center. 28 square miles, 180 miles of roads, current population roughly 28,000 people, 17,262 registered voters, about almost 300 employees, 288 to be exact, $60 million budget, almost 9,000 housing units, 716 businesses, and we have a council manager form of government with a charter. And the legislative branch is our town council. The executive branch is the town manager. And here's some additional demographic facts about our town as well. Looking at age and sex, percentage-wise, Bridgewater is almost split evenly between men and women. with 14% of seniors 65 and over and 23% kids under 18 and everybody else in between. The median income is roughly $92,000, which is $30,000 higher than the national average of $62,000. We have roughly 9% at the poverty level, which is also just about at the national average, which is 9.3%. In terms of education, 94% of the citizens in town graduate from high school, 35% have college degrees or higher. And from a race perspective, Bridgewater is predominantly white at 84%, which is roughly 10% higher than the national number, which is 73%. And you can see the breakouts of the other race and origin groups there. And now a little background on the charter itself, starting with some history. Back in 2007, a group of citizens filed a petition with the Board of Selectmen at the time to start an effort that would study all aspects of Bridgewater's government and make recommendations for potential changes. This petition turned into an article at the town meeting in November of 2008. It was actually Article 8 that evening, and that was voted on and approved by the citizens at the town meeting, which then actually formed the Town Government Study Committee. After meeting for 3 years, the Town Government Study Committee recommended changing from the open town meeting form of government to council manager form and creating a town charter. The citizens of Bridgewater then voted in April of 2010 to approve this new form of government, as well as the charter. And in January of 2011, Bridgewater officially began to operate under this new structure. So what is a charter? Well, it's basically a small constitution that enables a municipality to self-govern. Prior to having charters, towns in Massachusetts are governed by state laws and statutes, which means that many local decisions have to be approved by the state. Having a charter frees a municipality, and you can see here there are different types of municipalities, cities, towns, villages, boroughs. It frees us to be able to operate more efficiently. Having the charter frees us from direct oversight of the Commonwealth, and again, allows us to make more local decisions. Because of this local autonomy, the citizens of a municipality now have a greater voice in determining local policies. Charters also have staying power, meaning that they can't be changed easily by local officials like bylaws can, to cater to the issue of the day. It's no surprise that the trend in Massachusetts and across the nation for the past several decades has been towards adopting local charters. If you're wondering what Bridgewater's charter looks like, here's a view of the 10 articles or sections that make up our 29-page charter. I'm going to briefly go through each article and just mention what is contained in each article. So Article 1, which is titled Incorporation and Authority, basically sets the basic structure for our government. Talks about the fact that we have a town council and we have a town manager. It goes into the division of powers between those branches. There's a whole section on ethical standards that all town officials have to abide by. And there's also a section on definitions. And these definitions are things that are used throughout the charter. So Article 1 is very small in terms of content, but it's important in that it sets the stage for the rest of the charter. Article 2 gets into a lot of detail about the town council, the legislative branch. Talks about how it's composed, the fact that we have 9 councilors, 7 are precinct councilors, and 2 are at large. Talks about what their powers and duties are, how vacancies are filled, what their rules or procedures should be, and how they conduct their meetings. Also, this is where term limits appear for the town councilors. So there's other stuff in there, but that gives you kind of a sense of what's in Article 2. Article 3 is related to elected officials. And right now in Bridgewater, we really only have 2 officials or groups that are elected. The library trustees is one group, and then the town clerk is the other position that is elected. So this article describes those elected positions and talks about how they are elected, gives a little information about that. Article 4 gets into a lot of detail about the town manager. Talks about how the town manager is appointed, what the powers and duties are of the town manager. In the case that maybe a town manager needs to be removed, the process for how removal occurs is in there. Talks about what positions in the town are actually appointed by the town manager. So it's pretty detailed in terms of the responsibilities that the town manager has. Article 5 addresses the administrative organizations. In particular, it talks about the administrative code, what that is. And the administrative code, as you may know, is another document that falls underneath the charter that contains a lot of detail about the operation of the town. And so a lot of the administrative policies and procedures are in the administrative code, but in this article is where it sort of sets the stage and gives the structure for that. It also defines ordinances. It talks about the town manager and how department reorganizations should occur. There's a whole section on personnel administration. It defines, the HR function and what the town manager needs to do from a personal administration function. And this is where also the town attorney position is defined in this article. Article 6 gets into financial management. This is where the whole budget process and the capital improvement program is defined. Financial forecasting is also discussed here, as well as audit requirements. Article 7, it gets into election details. It talks about, when we have our elections, what the signature requirements are for anyone running for office. It talks about the precincts that we have, the 7 precincts, so on and so forth. So this focuses primarily on elections and any matters related to elections. Article 8 is very important. This is the article that gives the citizens of Bridgewater the opportunity and the mechanisms to participate in government. In here are described the things called initiative petitions. This is where citizens can suggest changes to our government, either through petitions or referendums. So this is really where the voice of the citizens of Bridgewater can be managed through this one article. Article 9 is general provisions, and this is sort of a catch-all for things that didn't fit into the other articles. There's a whole section in here on conflicts of interest. There's a list of prohibitions in here as well. So some of these things are things like discrimination, that we can't discriminate against employees or officials if they're, looking to have a position in the town. It talks about falsifying information, fraud, anything that is sort of illegal or things that we don't want to see happen in our town government are listed in this prohibition section. Also talks about campaign finance and some regulations around that. This is also where the charter revision clause is in this article. Talks about the charter has to be reviewed every 6 years for changes. And then also the posting of public documents is in this as well. Article 10 was added at the time when we created the charter because this handled how we were going to transition from our old form of government to the new form of government. So it basically talked about what things were going to continue during the transition period. For example, employees. No employee was going to lose their job during the transition. It talked about the bylaws, the fact that any laws that were in effect were not going to be affected by this change of government until the administrative code was going to be, developed. And it also highlighted the town council and town manager duties as well. So going forward, there's probably no need to have this article, but that's something we'll be discussing further as we move on as a committee. So hopefully that gave you a high-level view of what is in our charter. So that brings us to where we are today, and the fact that we now have 10 years experience operating under a charter and the council manager form of government. As a result of the changes approved by the citizens back in 2010, Bridgewater as a town has seen numerous improvements in its overall operation, from strengthened finances to streamlined organizational effectiveness and processes. Bridgewater has transformed itself from what was primarily a reactive operational model to one that now focuses much more on proactive planning and decision-making for the future. The question, however, is, are we as a town where we need or want to be at the present time? I think everyone would agree that the town is far from perfect, continuing on a journey, learning as we go, discovering new ways to improve. So how do we know when we finally arrived? Although there is no real way yet to measure quantitatively the success of a municipality, a study was conducted years ago that attempted to define the characteristics of what a successful town might look like. Many of the traits listed on this slide parallel what any successful business would strive for, which makes sense because our town is essentially a $60 million service enterprise with hundreds of employees, thousands of customers, and professional leadership guiding its operation. So if you look at some of these, you know, they are all very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Appropriate for our town, in any town, really, to be able to measure, you know, as subjectively or whatever, how well the town is doing. Although municipalities need to function with professional management techniques to be successful, they also need to be keenly aware of their customer base, both citizens and business partners. Since our town is primarily service-based, our government needs to ensure that it listens closely to its customers and shares information openly and treats everyone equitably. Building a sense of community by fostering and valuing citizen input is critical to ensuring the future success of any government. So this slide talks a little bit about some of those things: transparency, accommodating all citizens to participate in government, being inclusive and equitable so that everybody feels a strong sense of community. Even though the charter has served us well over the past 10 years, it's actually the charter itself that seeks to improve itself. Article 9.4 of the charter requires every 6 years a formal review be conducted for possible improvements. The first charter review began back in 2014, and after a 4.5-year effort, a revised charter was presented to the citizens in April of 2019 for approval, but as we all know, it failed to pass. The second charter review began this past June, which brings us to where we are today with this new charter review committee. And here's the list of the committee members today. So as we initially began to think about the work ahead over the next year, when we started our initial planning, we needed to agree on an approach that would hopefully increase the probability of a successful charter revision. In terms of grounding ourselves, we decided that since so much work had already been done by the prior Charter Review Committee in 2014, that we would use their recommendations as our baseline rather than start with a blank slate. And for comparison purposes, we also would use the 2018 Special Act, which included the Town Council rules and procedures and state legislature inputs. Creating realistic expectations is important to ensure future success. So in this regard, we want our focus to be on those areas of the charter that will result in adding benefits, such as improved efficiency and increased effectiveness, as well as fixing those key areas of town government that may need additional fine-tuning. It's been over 12 years since the last citizen survey was conducted by the Town Government Study Committee, and that was actually in 2008. So we felt it was important to gather feedback from the residents, given that we now have, as we said, 10 years of charter experience under our belts. Lastly, and probably most importantly, is the need to modify the charter update process to replace the all or nothing approach, the one that offers more flexibility and speed of delivery. Here's a view of how this modified approach might look, with examples taken from the 2018 Special Act. Using the amendment process, all of the miscellaneous grammatical changes would be packaged into a general bundle article. The other articles listed could be included since they aren't necessarily contentious in nature. So Article 1 has some updates to definitions. Article 2, some changes to the effective time for measures. Article 3, the term of office for library trustees, and so on. So these things that we've listed here initially in the amendment process, again, aren't really that contentious. We feel could be put in through the amendment process, which does not have to go through the state legislature. It can be managed locally by us. It just needs to be approved by the Attorney General. And the Attorney General has 30 days to do that. The home rule petition or special act method, we could then use that to include some of more of the debatable or contentious items that we have listed here. The appointed versus elected clerk, the town councilor term limits, the stipend, and the recall provision as examples. So these would be listed separately on a ballot that the citizens would vote on at some future election. Again, this is just a very high level view of what's possible, and obviously requires much more thought and due diligence on our part, as well as the town council, to understand and decide ultimately what will work best for Bridgewater. In terms of our high level plan, our initial focus has been on identifying and gathering data that will help guide our decision-making process. So in addition to conducting the citizen survey, which you may have heard our discussion about earlier in the meeting, and holding these public forums, we're also distributing questionnaires to key government town personnel and holding one-on-one interviews as necessary. We feel it's critical to keep the public informed and engaged throughout the process, as well as working closely with the town council as we progress through our recommendations. Using a phased rollout approach will hopefully improve our chances to get most, if not all, of our recommendations approved. So that brings us now to a time for questions and or feedback from you that might help guide our effort. These are just some sample questions that to stimulate some thought. Some of these, many of these were already in the survey that we've sent out. So I'm going to stop sharing. I see, I'm having an issue here. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
All right, Jason, can you open the mics up for now?
Ed, were you talking to me?
Yeah, Josh, can you open it and make it so people can raise their hand if they have questions?
Yeah, everybody should be able to raise their hand. I didn't know if everyone is.
I think having the questions up are helpful. We have, Carlton mentioned that, and because it's a lot of questions, it's nice prompt for people to see.
All right, so all right, we have Carlton. Are you raising your hand or are you giving us a thumbs up? All right, Carlton.
He's giving a thumbs up for listening to him, I think.
All right. All right, so if there's anyone that would like to ask a question or make a comment, raise your hand or let us know so we can call on you.
Carlton asked that we leave the questions up.
Oh, leave
So
the questions
in the chat.
So just share your screen again.
All right, I got to reopen. I closed PowerPoint, so I got to reopen it.
Really? Nobody's got questions?
I do.
Hey, Bill.
Hi. So one of the discussions that we had over the past year or so, and I say we, first of all, Bill with 388 Hayward Street. I will say I'm also on the town council representing District 6. One of the discussions that we've had over the past year or so is the construction of the finance committee. And I noticed that this group hasn't really addressed anything there. So in the charter, it calls for 9 members, 3 to be appointed from town manager, town clerk, and town council. So with 9, even with 9, it's always been a challenge to get a quorum going, and it's affected a number of items. This past week, there were 3 items that we couldn't take action on because they hadn't met. Now they've met since then, but what we had talked about over the past year or so is possibly shifting the construction of the exact construction of the finance committee out from the charter and into the administrative code. And allowing the construction to be created by ordinance, like many of the other boards and committees, so that there's a little bit of flexibility, either dropping it down to 5 or changing the construction, how the appointment works or something like that. I wanted to get some, it doesn't have to be now, but some feedback about that idea.
Thanks, Bill. I think that's a good suggestion. You know, at this point, we have, as a committee, we have not started discussing any recommendations yet. We're still data gathering. So we will certainly take this information back as we start talking about financing. We will include that in our discussion.
We did have 2, for clarification, we did have 2 responses in the open portion of the survey regarding the finance committee makeup.
Okay, good. Carlton?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, whatever it was years ago, on the finance piece. And I think our recommendations were the thinking at the time, and the town council decided it should be different. But the point is that there are all sorts of things in the charter that says the town council, basically we had no flexibility for $25,000 appropriations. So modifying what the town finance committee could recommend and work towards would make, from an efficiency perspective, it just doesn't make sense that every dollar, every gift to the town has to go before the finance committee for approval. I don't understand that level of control and thinking. So I think that needs to be seriously modified. And I don't actually remember what was done in the final version of it, but it was not what we recommended. I think there's a compromise area there. My second point is, I think you need to look seriously at how that can be made more efficient. I do remember that we recommended it to be a smaller board or committee with serious responsibility. And I think that needs to be really looked at. And I do remember that the town manager at that point wanted to change its charge to be more forward-looking instead of reactive. And I think the committee needs to seriously consider that from a perspective. I do have to take exception to some of the data you presented in terms of the demographics of the town. That's not consistent with what we're seeing in the master plan committee. I'm part of the Comprehensive Master Plan Committee, and I don't think those are consistent with what we found there. So there's got to be a reconciliation of that, and you guys need to handle that.
So just a comment, that data all came from the US Census. So if you guys have.
2010 is no longer appropriate for Bridgewater.
No, it was 2018. There's information out there that was updated from 2018. We can talk offline about that.
I think you need, not to argue, but I think you need to make it consistent with what our professional people have looked at. So there's a bit of a problem that I have. I do think that the current form of the government has weakened the citizens' involvement to an extent that they no longer care to be involved with the government. And that's in part reflected in the fact that every committee is appointed by a strong town manager. I think we need to go back and look at where some critical boards, commissions, and otherwise need to be elected participants. Because as we learned a couple of weeks ago in the town council meeting, the town council actually has no power beyond budget setting and certain licensing. They have no power to in fact manage the town manager. The only way they can do that is through a performance plan, and we know that that's not been effective for the last 10 years. So I think we need to seriously look at the powers of the town manager and make sure that the citizens are have more ability to engage in the town planning. I am a member of 2 committees, which is against the charter, and a member of an ad hoc committee. The town professional staff has failed to approach the advisory capacity of those committees and ask them in advance, what do you think of this? What do you think the citizens think about that? That is a major failure that causes people to no longer be engaged with the town. That's number 3. Number 4, I talked about the fiscal management. We had a lot of good ideas how to increase and improve the fiscal management of the town through the finance committee. I think I said that already. And I'm looking at the library. Why are you looking at the library trustees' terms of office? That's in the 1872 town plan, that you will have 9 members that are 3-year appointment rotating. I don't understand why we want to change what the people thought way back when. Maybe I'm an originalist, but quite frankly, I think that's unacceptable. Moreover, I think there is a move right now that the town library trustees has been eviscerated in terms of their ability to actually handle the money that they have been responsible to handle for some time. I think that is a really critical issue that this committee needs to look seriously at. What is the power of the town library trustees in terms of current practices? The recall, to me, is a no-brainer. We had to go back to 1900s, late 1900s. In fact, seems like forever ago, 1900s, to in fact find out that we didn't include a proper recall petition. And the previous town government review committee, in fact, provided a very clear, slightly edited version, and I think it's a no-brainer to move that forward. We have to have a recall petition. It's not something that needs to be put off to some major issue. It's clear and present issue. So it's a no-brainer where I'm coming from. I think I've said enough right now, but I think there's a lot of stuff that you guys as a committee need to seriously consider in terms of the town involvement in our government. Are we properly represented through voluntary committees in terms of governing this town? Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. All right, anyone else? Sam?
Hi, Sam Baumgarten, 60 Short Street. Since I joined you, I might as well speak a little bit. Sort of connecting to what Carlton said, and this is not necessarily inside the charter, but I'm wondering what the town manager and the council are doing in terms of effectively communicating with town residents. And I know that they're doing a good job with the web page and putting things up on the web, but in the 10 years or so that there's been a charter, we've also changed totally in how we deal with news. You know, very few people now get a newspaper anymore, and it all used to be in the enterprise. And so unless somebody is on Facebook a lot or checking the web page a lot, they may not get the information about opportunities for committees and participation in government. So I'm just wondering, just sort of brainstorming, what is the council and the town manager, what are they doing to get the messages out? And can there be maybe more of a universal email system to all residents to get notices out? So that's just one thing. And then on some of the key questions that came up a few years ago, as far as the clerk, the stipends, term limits, I'm not sure if you folks are leaning one way or another at this point. At that time, I was in favor of keeping the clerk as an elected position, and I still feel that way, partly because I still like to have a direct voice in what happens in town. I still miss town meeting, frankly, to have a direct voice in everything that gets voted on, but I'd hate to see another position go by the boards without my direct voice being there. As far as stipends go, it seems clear that our council folks probably deserve some kind of a stipend, but my philosophy always comes back to where else could that money go that might be better used. We never have enough money for the schools. We never have enough money for police, fire, highway. I mean, we're still operating with like 5 highway people in a town this size. So I guess I lean towards putting whatever money we have into that kind of area rather than into stipends. And I'm definitely in favor of term limits. Is it still 12 right now? 12 years? 4 terms? You know, certainly not more than that, and maybe even less, maybe 3 terms I would go for. So without seeing the rest of the questions, that's what I had to bring up.
All right, thank you, Sam. Great input.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get the questions back up. But if any of you filled out the survey, with pretty much the same questions. Bill?
Thanks. So the comment about communication is great. You know, I've been watching. I probably would have forgotten about this meeting, except Marilee sent out an email, and I'm on the distribution group, and so reminded me that you know, this was happening. I don't know if you posted into Facebook at all. That stuff scrolls by faster than water right now. You know, if you miss it, it's gone.
Actually, what we did was we tried to get them pinned at the top, so every time everybody went in. So I don't know. It works sometimes. It doesn't work.
I know, but even there, you're reaching a limited group within Bridgewater, because there's an awful lot of people that still don't use Facebook or rely on Facebook daily for news. Yep. And the fact that we don't have a daily newspaper makes it really difficult. As a counselor, I set up a neighborhood Facebook page that I invited people into, tried to keep it apolitical and just focus on the subjects surrounding the neighborhood. And that seemed to work relatively well, but it's a very small group. So, you know, there's 4,000 people in my district. I certainly haven't talked to even 10% of the people yet. So I think communication is difficult. It's a challenge for this group. It was a challenge when we did the reviews last time. I hosted 2 or 3 review sessions when we were going through the changes last time. I think Sean and Aisha also did the same. There's always a small group that came, and even here I'm watching the number of participants. We jumped up to 14 now, and I think the committees have the participants. So we need to figure out a way to reach out, both from a council point of view, committee point of view, and that sort of thing. I want to, though, that's just kind of an aside. I wanted to focus a little bit on the questions. I thought that the survey was a good start. I saw that some of the questions were kind of conditioned toward what the, the prior changes were, and maybe what you guys are thinking about now, but I'll just pick one. And I don't ever expect to be the benefactor of this. It's not a conflict of interest, but let's talk about stipends. So someone told me during the last session, charter review, a stipend was important because it attracts a number of different people that feel they couldn't otherwise participate on town council. Now, I know that's true for any board, but let's focus on the council. And it was focused on, and I said this and then got beat up in social media, but it was focused on people that A, couldn't afford a babysitter, whether that's a single dad, mom, whatever. It was focused on people that felt that they couldn't dress the part. It was focused on people that had other challenges, just to make it give them the ability to run for council, be on council. And I've always told people that, for me personally, it costs me about $1,000 a year to be on the council. I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford that. A clear example is the year my kids were in robotics. I just simply wrote a check. I didn't have them do fundraising because I didn't want to have any appearance of conflict of interest. So that year, being on the council literally cost me over $1,000, out of checks. But when we do a survey of other towns that have councils, we find that the dollar amounts are much higher than the 3,000. And I'm not suggesting that it needs to be higher than 3,000, but when we look at like Randolph, it's 5,000. When we look at Barnstable, it's over 10,000. When we look at Watertown, it's 7,500. So I think that a stipend could attract people to run for the council, which we've all seen the challenges over the years of empty seats and empty ballots and things like that. But the question, and I don't know if it was Tom or someone else that constructed, I think it was the group that constructed the survey. The question really is, might it be good to go out with that survey and say to the people that are going to answer, give them a multiple choice at this point to see what the temperature is on what the public is willing to say would be a stipend. 0 might still be an option. 3,000 might be an option. 5,000 might be an option, and kind of get more input as to what the range might be before you settle on a number and just make that the number going forward in the recommendation. So that's my point for now. Thanks.
So Bill, I'm actually going to explain that one a little bit. So we had the conversation about doing a scale like that with 0, 1, 1, 3, 5, 7,000. We looked at some of the towns you mentioned. There's a few other towns as well. And then we kind of found a median, and picked that number and went with that, just to draw a clear line in the sand to make it easier for people from the get-go. Like, it's not our final recommendation, right? Like, there might be another survey, there might be more information coming later, but it was an easy line for, so it wasn't yes, no, and what level it was, level or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I just felt when I did the survey, I didn't have a choice there. It was either 3,000 or
0.
It wasn't a choice,
Right.
There were several other questions like that, but I just want to focus on that one.
All right. Thank you.
Ed, could I say something?
Sure. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, I couldn't tell if I was muted or unmuted here for a minute. Just thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing the survey. I think it was a well-done survey. I hope more people, how much longer is it open, did you say?
A week.
Till next Wednesday at 11:59 p.m.
One more week, okay. It'd be nice if some more people would participate in it. I'm gonna agree with the discussion on stipends. I do think they're important. I think if people, if we want to keep people involved, to be able to get a babysitter or to go out, call in for dinner to be delivered so you can make it on time, maybe it's a little easier when it's a Zoom meeting. But if we ever go back to meeting in person, I think sometimes it's hard for people to get out of the house, and there's, there's more than just that one meeting every 2 weeks for the counselors. They serve on committees as well, and it takes up quite a lot of time. So, and I'm with Sam, thinking about where else could the money go, but I think we need effective, involved counselors, and if that's going to encourage people to look at it as something that they really take seriously and show up for and put their time in for, then I think $3,000 is a relatively inexpensive way to get that kind of commitment. I will also say that as the one elected town official other than the town councilors, the one who is at a job 35 hours a week, and when it was possible, met with the public all the time because they were in and out all the time. I have heard since the beginning that citizens feel pretty generally shut out of town business and town workings. I think that showed in the survey too. They just feel very alienated, very disenfranchised. And I'm not sure what you do for that. I think some of what's difficult is that I believe only 2 of our department heads live in town. So they come into town, park and work and go away. And I'm not sure how often they drive around the town and see what's going on, see where there's trash piling up, see the trees that have fallen down, the trees that have been butchered by National Grid, how the town is taking it in the jaw with some of the things that are happening. Or if they see those things, if they care about them the same way citizens do. I'd love to think they do, but I'm not sure that that's happening. And I think citizens feel that. They feel kind of this disenfranchisement of government from them. And like Sam says, no easy place for them to go. You can go to a town council meeting every 2 weeks. Sometimes a few people do. If it's a big hot issue, you'll turn out a big bunch of people for a few weeks. But then it all goes away, and they kind of forget that meeting is happening every 2 weeks, and forget to go and keep their counselors informed with how they feel. So I'm not sure what we do about that, but I do think that the lack of leadership in town government being actually involved in the town is making a difference, and not a good difference. And a thought about continuing a survey or doing another survey or something like that. We send out, the town clerk's office sends out the local census every year around between Thanksgiving and the first couple weeks in December. We try to get it out before the holiday mail hits. And that goes to every household in town. That's also what contains the dog license renewal. So I think it's and we also put on the bottom of it the date of all the elections coming up for the next year, so people can take that and put it on their refrigerator if they want. So you might want to check into what it would cost to put a one-page survey in with that for citizens to return to you that way, or at least kind of get something out in front of them. It's coming up in the not too distant future. I don't know if it's helpful to you or not. There's also a tax bill mailing that goes out around the first of the year, I think. I can't remember, maybe Councilor Wood knows better which times those, they only mail it out twice a year, although we pay taxes 4 times a year. So, and I don't know how they do it, if they can put something in it, but I know we can put something in with our census because we did it last year for community and economic development. So I know it costs a little bit, but I would think it might be worth it to the advisory committee.
So Marilee, would you be the person to talk to about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So after November 7th, which is after November 3rd, which is when we
We would just need to know.
breathing again.
We would need to know what the date is that we would need to have something.
It is true. It is true. And yeah, you should start thinking about it now. And we should talk about it before that, Ed.
Okay.
So I'm just kidding. I can still do other things as much as the election, but only kind of. But this is something important that should get done. So yeah, we should think about it.
And I think the idea about the all town postcard is probably a good one just for your communication, because it's I think it was about $500 when we checked into it last time. You get a complete address coverage out of the post office.
Yeah, communication is really tough. You know, I just don't think there's any good way around that. Don't forget BTV and scrolling on BTV, and even maybe doing a little info for their news sometime for citizens, for the Charter Review Committee while you're doing it. That reaches a totally different demographic than Facebook. So you're going to have older senior citizens watching BTV. Some of them still pay for cable. Some of them are still watching. So it's it's another way. Bridgewater is another way to put something out. There are certain people who read that and take the electronic version of the Buzz and give it a look. So those are just a couple of suggestions, but communication is tough, and I wish you all the best trying to do that. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks for your help. Sam.
Just to quickly piggyback off Marilee and the value of snail mail, I guess. In that census form, which goes out every year, maybe a one-page addition could be put in describing your town government. And just say, this is how Bridgewater operates. We have a council. Here are your counselors. Here's the meeting dates for the year, or roughly what the dates are. And just an informational piece that every voter would get, especially people who are new to Bridgewater. So maybe you could accomplish the old two birds, with one stone. The other thing I wanted to mention, most of you are aware of the fact that an ordinance was brought up before the council a couple of weeks ago about creating an ad hoc committee, which would consider the formation of a permanent committee to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in the town. That was voted down for now, and the issue will be brought back, I'm sure, in terms of whether a committee is the best way to go or whether to have some type of diversity, equity officer in town. But that made me think about, is there any language in the charter that deals with diversity in hiring, inclusion in hiring, and how the town should function in terms of diversity, inclusion, and equity?
Yeah, I don't think there is right now, but that's a good point. We'll certainly look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate the dialogue, good input. Anyone else feel like chiming in?
Just one point. So Sam, this is the postcard that went out several years ago. Did you get one?
Oh, I probably did. Yeah, but I pay attention, so.
Yeah. That was the all coverage. It covers all the district counselors, the town clerk, the at-large counselors, the Bridgewater fire, police, and town clerk and town managers contact info.
When was the last time it went out?
I thought it was going to be an annual event, and it happened once.
Okay, so that would work.
I still have mine tucked in my little address thing for town stuff. So it was good. We should do it again.
It might be a matter of who pays for it, Bill. I think you guys out of the council budget.
Yeah. I wrote the ordinance before to get it out, and I think it did come out of the council budget. And I thought we could repeat it multiple times, and if that's probably a good idea to think about that again.
Carlton?
I just want to repeat that it's really critical that this committee take a serious look at how we can get the town citizens to re-engage with our government. I think I've heard other people talk about it. My experience is that it's not happening. And I think we need to really look at the power of the legislative branch. I think they need to be given more power to manage the town. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I'm just thinking about what Carlton said, and I know we've got two counselors on here. So I've been concerned from the beginning that counselors don't seem to engage a great deal with the people in their precincts. And I think some counselors started at the beginning. I know, Bill, you said that you have, you have a list of your 4,000 people. I know Pete, who's on here, has a very tiny precinct of actual voters. Counselor Gallagher does the coffee with the counselor every once in a while down at Bridgewater Bagel, and people will stop in to do that. But other than that, there really aren't any ways. I wonder, and I don't know that it's for the Charter Review Committee. I don't know that it's something legalistic, but I do think that the counselors are the ones who need to be bringing the voice of the people in. They're the ones who are elected by the people. And I think their people would like to have some opportunities to talk to them and feel that they're getting their messages across. Now, I do know that certain times when there was something, I can't even remember what it was, there were some meetings out at the Flag Street school early on to discuss, probably, maybe the recall. I can't remember for sure, but I do know that a counselor had meetings out there for a little bit, but they don't seem to last. And I think it follows the same pattern that we saw happening with town meetings. The reason we switched governments is because we were starting to have town meetings in a town of 15 or 14,000 people where 20 people would show up or 50 people would show up, which isn't really what a town meeting was supposed to be. And so maybe it's the same thing. Maybe people don't really care enough to show up, but they care enough to complain about it when it's taken away. But they didn't really care enough to do it. Maybe that's why they don't go to council meetings either. I don't know. So, but I am wondering if there's something counselors can do to try to generate that interest and highlight what's happening, at least in their own precincts.
Yeah, Marilee, I think I agree with you on that. And I do recall when the council first got established back in 2010, there was some initial training that the council did have at the time. It was minimal, I must say, but at least it got them acquainted with what their roles were going to be. But I'm not aware of any training that's occurred over the last 10 years. And I think we're at a great point right now where maybe the council needs to go through another series of, sessions that basically help them to understand their roles and what they should be doing, other than just passing legislation. They represent the citizens of the town, and they really need to engage with their constituents. And so I've got some leads on, I was going to be talking with Sean about that soon, some leads on some potential people that would come in and do some training. Because I think part of the issue right now between the council and the town manager has got to do with not understanding fully the power that the council has right now. And so helping them to understand better about what they can and can't do, I think will go a long way. I think the other thing is just general apathy. I mean, in town, we can do a lot to try and improve communication, but if people aren't interested in what is going on in town and participating in government, it's just not going to happen, So can we address the apathy issue somehow? Can we entice people maybe to want to get more involved. I don't know. I mean, similar to the way we're doing, maybe doing stipends for town counselors, maybe we get creative and we say anybody that volunteers for a committee gets some sort of a rebate on their taxes, or something that could incentivize people to get more involved in their government. I don't know. But we should have some brainstorming sessions around that, and maybe either at the council level or at the town manager level. But our committee will definitely be talking more about that. Thank you. Anyone else? This has been a great dialogue. Appreciate the feedback. All right. Well, as we said, the survey has another week to go. Marilee, by the way, I really appreciate your help in getting a reminder sent out on the meeting here. So that was great. We have definitely improved attendance. We're hopefully going to get a few more people to respond to the survey by the end of next Wednesday. And then we'll be...
Send me the link to the survey again, and I'll send out one of those.
Reminder. Great. Thank you. And then we're also finalizing our personnel interview questionnaire with the town officials. So we'll be sending that out soon and doing some one-on-one interviews with some of the department heads and such. So, we're still in our data gathering mode, but coming to the end of that, and then we can really get our teeth into talking about some of the recommendations and some of the issues facing the town. So we thank you for participating tonight.
Could I say one more thing, Ed? Just about that distribution list I have, has about 280 people on it. None of you know who it goes to, except you'll sit here and say, oh, I'm on it. But if by any chance you are not on it, or you know people that you think should be on it, send me their email addresses. I'm happy to add people to it. I probably put on it about everybody that I can think of that I know. So feel free to send me. So, and if they're already on it, I won't double them up and make them get double, but I'd be very happy to add people because you all have more contacts and, can diversify it more than I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, then I guess we'll adjourn the public forum if no one else wants to speak.
Ed, can I just...
Yes.
Yep, this is Gina Gasconi, 35 Ball Avenue.
Hi, Gina.
Hi there. Just to, first off, thank you for everything you and the committee are doing. It's much appreciated. As far as getting people more interested and involved in the town happenings, my thought is if more positions were elected versus appointed. I know, speaking for the Park and Rec, which when I started, it was just the Rec Commission, we would have people run, not all the time. Some of us that have been on for years very seldom had opposition, but if we had an opening, people would run for it. I have no idea myself, and I like to think I kind of know what's going on in town, how the committee that looks at the people that are on the different commissions and how they attract people. I see on Facebook a lot of people that, the Facebook warriors, somebody else will say, well, there's openings on the finance committee or there's openings on this, but possibly, and it's just a thought to throw out there, my church, St. Thomas Aquinas, does a volunteer. They do it for 2 weekends. They just put out, this year it's done online, but just a list of all the positions. Maybe somehow put it out there, put it out in that paper that's going out, as you talked about with what Marilee sends out for the census. Something like that. These are the different boards in town. Even if they're not elected, just a list of them and say what they do and try to draw attention that way. Because my bet is that more than half the people in town have no idea what these boards are, and they might be interested if they knew. But just, a thought like that, you can have, something just go out to the people and let them know.
Yeah.
That
Just
brings
a thought.
that brings up an interesting point. I'm sorry, I know you're trying to adjourn. So I'll try to let you get out of here. But while we have descriptions of the committees in the admin code, there are no job descriptions for people on the committees, like what that committee actually does. So that's a huge job. There's not tons, there's quite a few committees. I keep a master tracking list of people who've served on committees and are serving, who've been sworn in, who have their SFIs and their COIs and those sort of things. I have about 800 entries in that master tracking list, trying to keep track of who's on what. So if you're looking at the town website to see what committees have vacancies and need to be filled, I guarantee you it's not up to date, because they don't know when people drop off and when people's terms have expired. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they get filled, and sometimes they haven't gotten filled. And we haven't had a Board of Health for over 4 years. Now we have almost, Pat Neary, we almost have 2 people on the Board of Health so that we'll have a quorum. And I know for sure that the people who are going to serve on that Board of Health don't actually know what their job is supposed to be, because they don't have a job description for what it is, or not one put together for Bridgewater. So maybe, I don't know if there's room to throw that in someplace in all of this. I think it would be very helpful. I know even when when we were trying to recruit people to be on this charter review committee, and I tried to put a little pressure on maybe Cleone Mainville or some other people. And they'd say, well, what does it do? What does it do? Well, it would have been really helpful to have it more succinct, more than they meet every month or every 2 weeks or something like that, something more descriptive of what the committee actually does. All right, now I really, really will mute myself and shut up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dina. That was good input. We'll definitely consider that, and Marilee as well. One of the challenges obviously is whether something goes in the admin code or goes in the charter. We have to be very conscious of that. The admin code normally contains a lot more detail about how things are done. The charter more or less defines the what, and the administration code defines the how. So as we discuss some of these things, we may say, well, geez, that belongs more in the administrative code, not in the charter. But as long as it's somewhere, right?
Right.
Okay, anyone else? All right, this has been a great forum. Thank you so much all for joining. Appreciate it. We're going to adjourn this tonight. The next and final forum is now scheduled for October 17th. That's going to be a Saturday morning at 10. We're going to have that on a weekend. Hopefully, maybe we get some other people to join that. So if you have any friends that you want to pass that along to, that would be good for us to know, have them know that. Okay, we'll move to our next agenda item tonight, which is new business. We have no new business to discuss tonight. On old business, we have the citizen survey, which we already chatted about briefly. Unless there's anything else we want to talk about on the citizen survey.
I would just like to remind anyone that's on the call to make sure that you fill it out. I did take a quick gander at it. It does look like there are some on the call that didn't take the opportunity yet, so please do that.
Oh, great. All right. Good reminder, Tom. Great. The other item we were going to talk about tonight is the personal interview update. And Scott was going to provide us tonight with the revised final version of that. But unfortunately, like I said earlier, he got bogged down with a mess in his kitchen. So he wasn't able to join tonight. So we'll have to have that discussion at our meeting next Wednesday instead. Okay, moving to the second item under old business, which is our committee planning, the recommendation decision matrix. Last time we talked about this, I think we had populated it with the results or the recommendations from the 2014 CRC. Since then, Tom has taken the recommendations from the Rules and Procedure Committee's work and updated the matrix to include that as well. So now we have both the 2014 CRC and the 2017 RMP information in there. I have gone through it at least once, made a few minor changes, but it's still not, it needs a little bit more fine tuning before we actually start working with it. So I hope to have that done by next Wednesday, and then we can actually get involved in talking about that. So any further comments or questions on the decision matrix? No?
I'm behind a little. This is Janet.
Yep.
I'm behind obviously because I just joined. I got sworn in yesterday, by the way.
Oh, great.
And I don't know what the TCRP is supposed to stand for. What is that?
So that's Town Council Rules and Procedure Committee.
Okay.
So what happens, the process is the Charter Review Committee presents its recommendations to the Town Council. And then the Town Council, rather than vote on it right away, what they do is they send it to one of their subcommittees, the Rules and Procedure Subcommittee, and then they discuss it. They make any tweaks to it, changes to it, whatever, and then they come back to the council and propose the council vote on whatever they end up with. So my assumption is that's what's going to happen. It happened last time, and I think it's going to happen this time as well.
Okay, thank you.
So some of our recommendations may not make it through the Rules and Procedure Committee. Some may, and the Rules and Procedure Committee may make additional changes that that we did not discuss. So they will present the final view to the council, and then the council will vote on whatever needs to go further in the process.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that's it for old business. Anyone have any other comments, questions on that? Okay, the next item is public comment. Do we have any other citizens that would like to speak unrelated to the public forum? If there's any other things you want to bring up, now's the time. Okay, looks like we have no one for that. Are there any specific action items that anyone wants to add to the meeting for next week, other than what we will be discussing under old business? Okay. All right. So for the month of October, we have a meeting on the 7th, which is next Wednesday. That's the first and third Wednesday of the month. So next Wednesday, and then the 21st will be our second meeting in October. So make sure you guys get that on your calendar. All right. If there are no more comments, questions, we will. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Hi, Thomas Golden, motion to adjourn.
There a second?
I, Clan Mainville, second.
Okay, any discussion? No. All right, Josh, take a roll call.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Darren. Darren, I think you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Janet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you all. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.